In August of this year, he was subpoenaed by the defense. Merrifield notified the RCMP, as he should, and basically was threatened that if he appears for this subpoena, there will be repercussions.
Back in April, we sat down with Paul McNamara and Pete Merrifield, two former law enforcement officers who revealed they were targeted with covert surveillance by federal authorities. According to them, their phones were infected with monitoring spyware as part of a federal investigation. Today, we're reconnecting with Paul following explosive new revelations brought forward by Democracy Watch, raising serious questions about the conduct and accountability of Canada's Federal Police Service. Paul, welcome back to Northern Perspective.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, so it's been about 6 months since we spoke with you and Pete. What's the update? What can you tell us that's happened since then?
Yeah, it's a whirlwind. I tell you, Ryan, it's it's crushing. Yeah, I honestly, I would never have believed this as a police officer for 30 years that this type of behavior would occur in Canada. And here I am, at the forefront of this. So as you alluded, myself and Pete Merrifield, a current sergeant in the RCMP, we wrote an open letter to Mark Carney and the government, pointing out the fact that we had found all these issues in our national security infrastructure that are detrimental to our own well-being. And nobody wants to hear us. Nobody wants to look at it. And eventually, we end up with a number of information to obtains, which is an affidavit basically by the police that is used in order to obtain a search warrant. And it outlines the police investigation and the reasons why a search warrant of some kind is required to further the investigation. And it turns out that all of these information to obtains on October 1st, 2024 were released to the media, and the Globe and Mail and Rebel News published one of those information to obtains, which is absolutely bizarre in itself, being that Miker, the subject of those investigations, has not yet been to trial. It's a national security file, and it was fully unredacted, which again is not the norm. But a real concern attached to these information to obtains was a document from the RCMP explicitly saying, "Do not disclose." And the reason they did not want it to be disclosed, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you can find this yourself, anybody can read this, is this section contains sensitive information that really would be injurious to the national security of Canada, and it should be covered by Section 38 of the Canada Evidence Act. And it outlines CSIS operations spying or attempting to spy on China. The very thing that we keep accusing China of in this country, such as the Buddhist monks in Prince Edward Island. And we've been trying to bring this to the attention of the authorities, and all that's happened is we are being really attacked and forced into a long, protracted fight with the government, the federal government. And this is the RCMP and the rest of the federal agencies, such as the Public Prosecution Service of Canada and the Department of Justice, orchestrating a cover-up.
I'm just gonna. I need to catch my breath a bit for some of that. So that that document that was released to the media, was that released by one of these two federal agencies, CSIS or the RCMP?
It was released by the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. They are the ones who basically had it released through the courts in connection with the federal policing, national security infrastructure, and INSET, C Division INSET, who are running the investigation. This should never have been disclosed. This should never have been released to the public.
Now, is it common for documents like this to be released unredacted to the media?
No, I would encourage any journalist or any citizen to ask for, say, the information to obtain on the Cameron Ortiz file, perhaps the Canada Space Agency file that was found not guilty not too long ago. Let's ask for all the information to obtain on the current Hydro-Quebec espionage case that's currently ongoing. Perhaps we could ask for any information to obtain that were used on the secret police stations in Montreal. I guarantee you will not get those. Nobody will give them to you.
And if they did, they would probably be heavily redacted.
Oh, 100%. The ITOs, for example, on the 4 Quebec soldiers, this big terrorism case that we have, those ITOs are heavily redacted. So why in Miker's case, and I bring that up because my name and Merrifield's names are heavily embedded in these information to obtains, are fully unredacted. I would suggest, Ryan, that is a threat reduction measure in conjunction with the RCMP and the Public Prosecution Service, because as we know, the three top RCMP officers, Duhame and Flynn and Gauvin, after the foreign interference inquiry, suggested that the RCMP can no longer reach the gold standard of providing evidence for a prosecution, and so we'll take alternative measures. I mean that's how we get around the our civil rights. That's how we get around the charter, and we just do what we can for disruption. But when we do that, we have no recourse. There's no warrants. There's no oversight. INSERA really has no power. NSICOP is toothless, and our national security infrastructure is the actual danger to ourselves, not some foreign power. It's internal.
Pete Merrifield, you mentioned, is a sergeant in the RCMP, so he's a part of one of these organizations that seems to be involved in this sort of thing. What's been going on with him?
Well, again, another tentacle to this massive cover up, because really ultimately that's what it is. I mean, let's call it for what it truly is. We wrote this letter, myself and Sergeant Merrifield together. We wrote an open letter, as you know, to Carney and the Liberals. And we mentioned the Section 38 do not disclose issue, which is obviously injurious to Canada's relationship with China, as we try to have a relationship with them as we have this week. I'm hoping the Chinese will probably ask Mr. Carney about this do not disclose confidential appendix released by the RCMP and our Public Prosecution Service. And that letter was written in early April of this year. Now, we never received a response from anybody on that. Nobody wanted to talk to us. Fair enough. But in August, Merrifield was required as a witness in the Miker case, subpoenaed by the Defense Counsel for some issues surrounding Merrifield's suspension by the RCMP some 18 months ago now for his relationship with Micah, ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing and reinstated. So bear that in mind.
So he was called as a witness by the defense.
Correct, because there's a crossover between the investigation of Pete and how it relates to the Micah case. So in August of this year, he was subpoenaed by the defense. Merrifield notified the RCMP, as he should, and basically was threatened that if he appears for this subpoena, there will be repercussions. So in late August, Merrifield came to Vancouver, attended court, but was not actually called to the stand due to the length of the arguments that were ongoing over those 3 days. On September 9th, and this is interesting, Ryan, on September 9th at 9:45 in the morning, Merrifield called me and informed me that he had now been subject of a level 3 code of conduct for dismissal. In relation,
what's that?
So that's basically, we're gonna get your jobs gone. We're gonna can you from policing. So he's facing.
Wait, okay.
So he's facing dismissal. But Ryan, the kicker here is, while he was threatened, there would be repercussions for appearing on behalf of the defense in a trial. The actual allegations against Pete are because he wrote an open letter to Carney, and as you know, we appeared on your show. And so the RCMP have decided that's what they're going to go after Pete for. Now, April 12th is when we sent that letter into Carney. Why did it take them until September 9th to come up with a code of conduct after they'd threatened him should he appear as a witness? There'd be consequences to that. This is just pure retaliation.
Well, and he received a police award in the spring of this year, didn't he?
That's right. Made I think an order of merit. A very, I think, the highest level of commendation you can receive for all the good work that he has done in national security issues and federal policing.
Okay, so let's just play this out. So at one point, Bill Micah, who is over in China, and we covered this a little bit on the last podcast. So he gets accused of essentially being a spy, like a spy for China. And so they arrest him. When he comes back, it's revealed that he's actually a CSIS asset. And that is what this trial is going on. During that time, in order to get information on him, you and Sergeant Merrifield were having all kinds of spyware installed on your devices that you didn't know about to try to get additional information on that. And both of you were caught up in all of this garbage that was going on. You lost your job with the U.S. consulate in handling security, and then Merrifield is put under investigation for this, is then cleared, then receives a police award. You both pen a letter to Mark Carney saying, hey, you may want to deal with some of these ministers, and you may need to have some context as to why you need to deal with them. You get no response. You come on our podcast. You say the same thing. Nothing happens for 6 months. He's subpoenaed for the Bill Micah case as a defense witness. He does so because he's been subpoenaed, notifies the RCMP properly, is threatened that if he attends as a witness, which is his civic duty to do so, that he's going to face consequences. And then the RCMP retaliates by going after him with the maximum disciplinary process that they have within the RCMP to discharge him. That's what we're talking about here, right?
That's correct. And to add one more little layer to that, Ryan, on the day that he's notified at 9:45 in the morning, he tells me at 9:45 in the morning on September 9th that this has occurred. 2 hours later, we receive an email from NSIRA regarding the complaint that we had lodged about RCMP conduct. The investigation is being suspended. And that came exactly 2 hours after Pete had found out that a code of conduct is being launched against him. And curiously enough, the letter that NSIRA sent to us was dated July 25th. And it took them a month and a half to inform us of this suspension of the investigation. Coincidentally, 2 hours after we received word of Merrifield's code of conduct investigation. And these coincidences have been going on since I lost my job in 2021, Ryan. There's no coincidences here.
Growing up, everyone heard of the bounties. You heard of the RCMP, and they were supposed to be this almost this gold standard, this shining symbol of pride for Canadian justice. And the more we talk to people and the more we hear and the more evidence that comes out, and not like conspiracy theory stuff that you see on the far corners of the internet, like actual evidence that comes through documents and accounts like this, the more we see that is the furthest thing from the truth. And we saw it in the Aga Khan case, we saw it in SNC Lavalin. We're seeing it now come out with stories that have come up back as early as the early 2000s and 2013. There's other instances of this, but social media wasn't as prominent back then, so nobody knew about it. And we're starting to see that there's this trail and this pattern of a potential cover-up within supposedly our best police organization. And now they're going after one of their own in Pete Merrifield.
Yeah, Ryan, you're 100% right. I think the everyday rank and file guy on the street, driving a patrol car and responding to calls and assistance, I still think,
they're trying to do their job.
They're trying to do their job, but the problem with the RCMP is once you get that white shirt on, you're part of a cult, and that cult is to protect the image of the RCMP at all costs. It's got nothing to do with right and wrong and truth. It's a racket. It's exactly what it is. It's a racket, and CSIS has been getting away with it for years, and I think literally the RCMP are taking a page out of that playbook. We go after citizens that are easy targets because the government can do that. Myself, Merrifield, Miker, we were all targets of CSIS, which is how this entire RCMP fiasco started. And I know this. I probably can't right now give you all the documents, which I'd like to, but, I know by word of mouth, within the Miker file, for example, there were documents that were provided from CSIS to the RCMP with comments made that, the director of CSIS does not want anybody to know where these documents came from. You're not allowed to reveal how they were given to the RCMP. This is how wrongful convictions were prevalent prior to Stinchcombe. And there's a reason we have disclosure in this country, because the police cannot be trusted with their integrity when it comes to an investigation that's of high profile or value to them. We've got, again, I've been told, and I believe this to be absolutely 100% true. There's emails within the Miker file that allude to the shredding of documents on a national security file. How do you get a fair trial with that?
There's Yeah, there's I don't know if I coined it. I probably didn't, because someone a lot smarter than me probably did. But just a recent thing I've started saying is, if our laws don't apply to everybody, they don't apply to anybody. And
you're 100% correct. And again, if we want a robust national security infrastructure to look after our well-being, and I have to ask, why do we have to go after somebody like Quebec Hydro, the Canada Space Agency case, and the Micro case? These are cases that are really, as far as I'm concerned, in my own opinion as a police officer, relying on very, very circumstantial evidence with no real evidence to back up any of the statements. So for example, somebody says, oh, that guy works for China. Okay, we all jump on that. That's evil. It's horrible. But there's no evidence of any, emails back and forth with a Chinese handler. There's no payments coming back and forth from a so-called handler. And yet, there was the honeycomb wing design fiasco, where the designs for the honeycomb wing of the F-35 jet were stolen from Canada by a Chinese national who had no security clearance back in around 2015. And that now appears on Chinese military hardware. And yet Canada allowed that just to walk right out the door. When I lost my job and I ended up hooking up with Pete and realized what he was under, the initial, the initial shock of all that is, oh, woe is me. I've been wronged and I need to correct that. And eventually, I got over that hump and realized, in order for me to find the truth, and that's all I've ever wanted, it became apparent to me that if this can happen to me, this can happen to any Canadian. Brian, you're a journalist that's doing these podcasts. Eventually you're going to get to a point where CSIS has said, you know what, we've had enough of Ryan and Northern Perspective. Let's put in some threat reduction measures and make sure he can never do another podcast. We might have, people within CSIS or the RCMP who all of a sudden realize, wow, we're really off track here. This is becoming more like, East Germany of the 1970s, and I'm not happy with this. And they become targets of their own agencies because they believe in the truth. Canada is slowly losing its way, and it's going to take people like you and me and whoever else to stand up to this and say, look, enough's enough. Let's get back to the truth. Let's get back to being civilized within a democracy, because we are losing our way fast.